All right, so today we're going to be talking about ratios more. Your assignment on Delta Math looks like this. To log into Delta Math, your login should be your school email, so your student number at husdstudent.com, and then your password should be your initials. So my name is Ryan Haywood, so my initials would be lowercase r, lowercase h, so RH, and then my 6-digit student number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever your student number is. And then when you log in, you should be able to see your upcoming assignments. And this is the one that you have to do. Ratios. You'll notice that there are 4 sections to this, and you have 5 questions in each section. So there's a total of 20 questions. So let's go ahead and start with number 1. All right. Here we go. All right, so section 1 looks like this. Let's talk about, first of all, some resources that you have with all of these sections. And there's 4 different resources because there's 4 different sections. So if you need to, please watch the help video, right? You click on that and it goes through how to do these. I'm not going to do that now because I'm going to show you how to do that. And that's a resource that you can use if you need it after my explanation. You could also do this show example. And the example walks through how to do it. In fact, let's walk through this example right here. So it says to find the ratio of circles to triangles. So with this one, we have 1 circle, or 2 circles really, 1, 2, to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 triangles. So we have 2 circles to 8 triangles. And so what we do is we want to simplify that. So we can see that it can be divided into 2 groups, this first group and the second group. And we can see that for every 1 circle, there are 4 triangles. Okay, so what this did is it simplified our original ratio of 2 circles to 8. All right, 2 to 8. And what it did is we divided them into 2 groups, or divided both of them by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, 8 divided by 2 is 4, okay? And you can see that we have 1 triangle, or 1 circle to 1, 2, 3, 4 triangles with a ratio of 1 to 4. So that's how that works. Let's go ahead and do the next, or the actual problem. Okay. All right, so this one. Find the ratio of, okay. Find the ratio of triangles to circles in the diagram. All right, so with this, how many triangles do we have? It says the unsimplified ratio, all right? The unsimplified ratio, let's go ahead and, so the unsimplified ratio means that we just count them all. So we have 3 triangles to 3 circles, okay? So that's what we'll put here. The unsimplified ratio is just the number of triangles to the number of circles. Now, one thing that you're going to want to get in the good practice of doing is to actually really read the problem. So this is triangles to circles, okay? So later on, it's going to come in very important. It's going to be very important that you read that, because it's not always going to be one shape to one shape. It's going to be a different thing, or it might be circles to triangles, which then changes the ratio. All right. So, and then after we do that, we push try, and we got that one right. Now, for every 1 triangle, there are how many circles? Well, let's take a look. We have 1 triangle and 1 circle. And if we took this and we divided these into 3 groups, so 1, 2, 3, or if we took our ratio 3 to 3 and used our greatest common factor, which is 3, because 3 goes into 3 each one time. All right, so we divided our groups into 3 groups, or our group into 3 groups, and 3 divided by 3 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1. Therefore, we can see that for every 1 triangle, there is 1 circle. Therefore, the simplified ratio of triangles to circles is 1 to the 1, right? For every one triangle, there is one circle. And then we push submit answer. And we are good to go. All right, let's try one more of these. Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, so find the ratio of, again, we have to read the problem very carefully, of circles to squares. So we have 2 circles and we have 6 squares. So we have 2 to 6. All right, now the unsimplified ratio of circles to squares is just that, 2 to 6. All right, now for every one circle, there are how many squares? Well, let's take a look at this and put these in 2 groups because we have 2 groups, 1 and 2. So for every one circle, we have 1, 2, 3 triangles. And we can see that we divided this into 2 groups. If we have our greatest common factor, it is actually the number of groups that we divided it into, which is 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we see that we have 1 circle to 3 squares. All right, so let's go ahead and put that down, 1 to 3. All right, let's go ahead and move on to a couple of other problems that we have here. Okay, so you'll continue these and you'll move on to the next section. So you'll do 5 of them. I'm not going to do all 5. We're just going to do a couple other ones. Okay, now this next one is, let's take a look at this. So the ratio of triangles to squares in the diagram below. All right, so let's take a look at this. We count our triangles. We have 8 of them. We count our rectangles. Let's say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20 to 20 squares. So our unsimplified is 8 to 20. You can see that this next section is just a little bit more complicated. So 8 to 20. Okay. Now, for every 2 triangles, there are, all right, so with this, we can see that there are 4 groups, right? Here's group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4, which also means that our greatest common factor is going to be 4. So if we divided both of these by 4, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 20 divided by 4 is 5. And you can see that in one group, that is right. We have 2 triangles to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rectangles or squares. Okay, so for every 2 triangles, there are 5 squares. Therefore, the simplified ratio is 2 to 5. All right, submit that. Okay, now the thing that's really cool about this is it shows you the explanation here so you can see exactly what you did. I highly recommend going through that and trying to do your best to understand what happened. Okay, now this question is one of the ones that you have to pay very close attention to. It says find the ratio of squares to the total shapes in the diagram. So it's not squares to triangles, it's squares to total shapes. So how many total shapes, how many squares plus triangles are there? So we have 1, 2, 3, so 3, 6, 9, and 12. So we have 12 squares. But how many total shapes do we have? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So we have 12 squares, but 32 total shapes. So the total shapes actually includes the squares. So it wants to know how many squares to the total shapes. So our unsimplified ratio is just that, 12 to 32. All right. Now, another thing that some other questions might ask is what's the ratio of triangles to squares? So that means that you'd have to count the number of triangles and then your ratio would be triangles to squares. So you have to make sure and pay attention to the wording of the question. All right, so unsimplified ratio of squares to total shapes is 12 to 32. Now let's take a look at this. For every 3 squares, there are how many total shapes? Okay, so let's take a look. So we have 1, 2, 3, but then the total shapes in this first row are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 3 to 8. And again, if you take this, the 12 and 32, you can see that we have 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4. So our greatest common factor is going to be 4. And if we divided the 12 by 4, we get 3. And if we divide the 32 by 4, we get 8. And you'll see we end up with the exact same ratio, 3 to 8. So let's go ahead and type that in now. So for every 3 squares, there are 8 total shapes. So our simplified ratio of squares to total shapes is 3 to 8. And that is how those are done. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to simplifying ratios basics. So the first 2, where we have the intro that actually shows you the pictures. These ones, you only have the numbers that you need to simplify. So it says that there are 3 triangles and 6 squares. You could draw it out if you want, or you can just write this, 3 to 6. And what is the simplest ratio of triangles to total shapes? Okay, so it's not asking 3 to 6. I made a mistake there because I was assuming that it was just going to be 3 to 6, but it's not asking triangles to total squares. It's asking triangles to total shapes. So we have 3 triangles, and the total shapes is if we have 3 triangles plus 6 squares, that means we have a total of 9 shapes altogether. So that means our ratio is 3 to 9, not 3 to 6. We have to be very careful of that because, again, it's asking triangles to total shapes, which is all of the triangles plus all of the squares, okay? Which means we have 3 triangles and 6 squares for a total of 9 shapes, okay? So now we just simplify. Well, what is a number that goes into both 3 and 9? Well, the greatest common factor is really the only factor that they share, which is 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we have 1 to 3. All right. So that is how those are done. Submit our answer. So I did that one for you. And then we will go ahead and do one of these simplifying ratios in the 4th section. Okay. Now these ones, you'll notice that they're pretty much the same, but they're not asking triangles to shapes or anything like that. They're just giving you some numbers that are a little bit bigger numbers. I think most of them are still under 100, but usually greater than 10. And it's asking you to find an equivalent ratio in simplest terms. So what you want to do with this is you want to find the simplest form of this. So with this, I kind of go with what's obvious to me. Okay, 2 may or may not be the greatest common factor, but it's obvious that 2 goes into both of these because they're both even numbers. So you can use a calculator, or you can use however you want to divide. I know 40 divided by 2 is 20, and then 40. So 42 divided by 2 must be 21 because there's an extra 2. And then 60 divided by 2 is 30. All right. And I think that there's also another factor that goes into both of those, which is 3. Okay. So 21 divided by 3 is 7, and 30 divided by 3 is 10. Now looking at that, I could have used the greatest common factor of 2 times 3, which is 6. So I could have just used the factor of 6. And I could have said, well, 42 divided by 6 is 7, and 60 divided by 6 is 10. But if you do it a little bit roundabout way where you just divide with smaller numbers that aren't the greatest common factor, you'll still eventually get there. It just takes a little bit longer. But if it takes you a really long time to figure out what the greatest common factor is, this may even be shorter for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So it is 7 to 10. And again, if you get stuck on this, don't forget you have the resource of the help video and the example. So say you're like, you know what, Mr. Haywood, your explanation was okay, but I still didn't quite get it. I need help watching this video. So there's another video that explains how to do a couple of these. And then there are also these examples that show how to do them. And with the examples, it shows that you want to think of the factors, okay? So the factors of 100, so they think of all these, the factors of 75, and then they figure out, okay, well, the greatest common factor is 25. They have these common factors, 1, 5, and 25. And so we can figure that out. I probably would have just divided by 5 first, and then I would have divided by another 5 because I would have gotten, 5 into 20, so on and so forth. And there we go. All right. Hopefully that helps, guys, and good luck and enjoy your math time.